Will the Utah Jazz sign Lauri Markkanen to a long-term contract and make him a core piece for the future? That's the number one question on an Ask LOJ edition of Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Today on Locked On Jazz, it's an Ask LOJ edition. You've loaded it up once again. Will the Jazz sign Lauri Markkanen? It's kind of be a reoccurring question. You guys want details. We're going to dig deep into the numbers and what it means and whether it happens and how it happens. What are the Jazz doing with Isaiah Thomas? Will the Jazz trade? Would you trade for Trae Young? Ooh, juicy, spicy question. Will we see Jason Preston at some point? And do I think he's got a chance? Do you want the Jazz pick? We'll revisit that for a little bit. We got a bunch of other things there. Interesting question about weight. I don't know if we'll get to it. And points gained Friday. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen today. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Thumbs up, 5-star reviews, greatly appreciated wherever you might be. Q&A on Spotify you can do as well. So thank you very much for doing all that. And to the everydayers, you rock. Thank you very much. I super appreciate you. So thank you very much for being a part of the show every single day. Let's get to the first one, the most important one. Will the Jazz sign Lauri Markkanen to an extension? All right, let's get to the details. Felt like I almost should build a graph on this. Okay, so Lowry is a free agent. I'm going to try to see if I touch every detail here. Lauri Markkanen is a free agent in 2025. So he becomes a free agent the year after this one, the end of next season. At that point, Lowry can sign a max contract that would be about a 5-year, $250 million deal. Okay? Lowry is scheduled to make about 18 million next year, I think. 18 million. So over the next 6 years, a 5-year extension plus 250, Lowry would make a little bit under 270 million. He'd make about 268. Okay, so that's route one, is that Lowry plays for 18 million next year. He becomes a free agent. He then can choose where he wants to play, but he could get a max contract from the Jazz at that point of 5 years, $250 million. And let's be perfectly honest, this is all Lowry's choice. Justin Zanuck and the Jazz have been open that Lowry is fabulous. They want him as a key piece of the franchise. They want him to stay for as long as they can. They love what they have out of him. They love his development. They love his personality. They love him inside the locker room. They love everything about him. There's nothing about Lowry you don't like. This is Lowry's choice. So Lowry's only making $18 million next year. The next thing the Jazz could do is extend him. They could use their cap space. So the Jazz have about $41 million of cap space as of July 1st. Let's call it, we're just going to go round numbers so this makes simple. Like, kind of, I want to use round numbers, going to make everything simple. So basically, Lowry can become a free agent on a 5-year, $250 million deal. I think if I use round numbers, you'll remember it easier. So the Jazz have about $40 million of cap space. Okay? Give or take. We're using round numbers. If the Jazz can use that cap space for a marquee free agent, they can use it for multiple players, or they can use some of that cap space and give it to Lowry the way they did with Jordan Clarkson in the offseason and sign him to an extension. So in the case of Lowry, if you have about $40 million of cap space and Lowry's making about 18, if you can get Lowry up to $35 million, and then you extend him on the league rules, which is league rules max. I'm just maxing this out. I'm not sure Lowry gets max, but maxing it out. The league rules say you can get 140% of your salary as your extension. Then you can get Lowry up to $35 million next year with 17. He can get to about the same about the same number in 25, 26. Okay. here's a good comp on where this has taken place. The Sacramento Kings did this with Domantas Sabonis, who at this point, I would say Domantas Sabonis and Lauri Markkanen are incredibly similar players. They probably were the next two guys to not get the All-Star game. Sabonis has been brilliant recently. Lowry's been brilliant multiple times. So what the Kings did is they signed a deal with Domantas Sabonis that ends up being the combination of the whole deal was 5 years, $217 million. 195 of that was new money. So in other words, he was entering into his final year of this contract at about 19 million. So really similar to where he was. And then they gave him a bump because of the fact that they had cap space. And then they bumped him out to a contract that's about 43 million a year of an extension, which was, I think if you look at it, it's about a 4-year, $187 million deal on it. So it's a pretty interesting, that's the model here of what happened. So they gave him 195. He ended up with a 5-year, $217 million deal, $195 million of new money. So Lowry's got $18 million on the books for next year. The Jazz could give him about $17 million more, get him to 35, and then extend him out in a pretty similar thing. So the Kings used $8.6 million in cap space to bump Domantas Sabonis to $31 million, and then gave him a 4-year extension on the backside of that 31 for a little bit over $200 million. As I said, $195 million. So the Jazz could do something similar. Really, I mean, they could almost do the exact same deal. I'm sure they'll present something that's close to the exact same deal because, frankly, those two are really, really similar players right now. And if Keontae George can turn into De'Aaron Fox, and then we can go find other guys, maybe. So that's the model by which it can get done. So the decision for Lowry is if the Jazz were to do this, it comes out to being like somewhere around 5 years, $224 million, I think. Sabonis's ended up to be a 5-year, $217. They would be very similar. But as I said, if Lowry waits a year, he can get a 5-year, $250. Now, the 5-year $250 is on the backside. It really becomes a 6-year $268. And so does Lowry end up making 42 in his last in the next year after that? If he does, then it's a wash. And there's a lot of reasons why it's advantageous for Lowry to take the money now instead of playing with $18 million, and you're bypassing, I don't know how many guys have enough guts to bypass $200+ million of guaranteed money just so you can make an extra 24. That's kind of the math. So it's up to the Jazz. Here's the part that's up to the Jazz. It's up for the Jazz to be willing to use some of their, what we're calling $40 million of cap space to put on Lowry's $18 million and increase that number. The Kings did $9 million on Domantas and then extend him off that. League rules say the most you can extend him off is 140% on that first year. Okay? And then it's up to, so that's the Jazz decision. Will the Jazz do that? Yes. The Jazz will do something of that variation. I'm pretty certain of it. They've said, if you listen to what they're saying, they want to re-sign Lowry. So then Lowry's decision is, okay, well, 1, do I want to stay in Utah? 2, do I want, let's call it $200+ million of guaranteed money today? Or am I willing to risk playing under $18 million so that I can make $250 million of guaranteed money a year from now? That's Lowry's decision. So first, do I want to be in Utah? And second, what's my risk tolerance to bypassing $200 million worth of money? So will the Jazz extend Lauri Markkanen? Honestly, it's up to Lauri Markkanen, but I think you'll see the Jazz do everything they can to get that done. All right, we're going rapid fire next. Would you trade for Trae Young? Will we see Jason Preston? Which young prospect has the highest ceiling? What are the Jazz doing with Isaiah Thomas? Will he play for the Utah Jazz? It's a loaded day of Ask LOJ. You guys are the best. We're going to have those all coming up for you here on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai lineup of cars, just amazing. When I did the research for us, I looked at value, safety features, because this was actually the first time we were doing it was to buy a car for our kids. Safety features, bells, whistles, and there was no question to me that I could get the most safety, bells, whistles, fuel efficiency, everything else for the most money with a Hyundai. That was the answer for me. Then the next question was, do you like the look? That's up to you. But I'll tell you, if you're looking for a car right now and you're looking for an SUV, you can go from the Kona all the way up to the Palisade, the Tucson and Santa Fe in the middle. Take a look at the Hyundai and you decide whether or not that actually matches what you want to be driving. But the value, the price point, all those things, unquestionable. Electric cars, the Ioniq 5 is what I did end up buying for myself. It's fabulous. The Ioniq 6, super as well, really sporty, looks amazing. So go check those things all out at Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. Feel free to email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, and we'll make sure we get you the VIP treatment. Stitch Fix. This is super fun. I did this last week. I don't have the greatest fashion sense, as you can tell as I sit here on YouTube in a gray t-shirt, a gray hat, and I don't have a lot of time for it either. And so you can easily upgrade your wardrobe with Stitch Fix. The professional stylist helps you find new on-trend favorites that will make it work for you. So you give the stylist your size. They ask you, I went through a long question, it was like size. They show you a bunch of examples of do you like this? Do you like that? Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want are you cash? Are you formal? But not words, actual pictures of outfits. So you click on, I like this, I don't like this. Are you interested in shoes? Are you interested in belts? What are you interested in? What are the things that like? It was super cool. The stylist then sends you all the right pieces. It fits on point. It's like having ESP, but having someone do it for you. Stitch Fix makes it so easy. If you don't like to shop, you don't have time, you want time and effort, or you don't even know, or you don't have the confidence. I don't have the confidence to shop. That's the real story. So the style makes you feel good as you look good. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. Stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/locked-on. You'll do the whole test, the whole deal, and then and it's pretty cool. And then they'll send you 5 just for you pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. You keep what works, send back the rest. It's stitchfix.com/locked-on. Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 national streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today, and now we will launch our MLB Preview, March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 3-hour show previewing the entire Major League Baseball season. It starts 5 o'clock Mountain on March 20th. It is on Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 national streaming channel, also on Locked On Sports on Amazon Fire TV. So mark your calendars down, March 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Mountain. Locked On Sports Today launches the MLB Preview show on those channels. Make sure you grab it there, Amazon Fire TV or Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Would you trade for Trae Young? Ooh, Atlanta is in town. Trae Young, one of the most dominating, great offensive players, is been out mercurial at times. Here's my thought on Trae Young. Here's what I think makes this a complicated question. If I go to the Ringer's top 100 players in the NBA, stop me when you hear a player you think is going to get traded. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Joel Embiid. In the chat, you can do it. Hit me on email. Kawhi Leonard, Steph Curry, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Tyrese Halliburton, Donovan Mitchell. He'll get traded, probably not to us. Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Jamal Murray, De'Aaron Fox. Maybe at some point Sacramento has to blow this thing up. Paul George, Bam Adebayo, Domantas Sabonis, Dame Lillard, Victor Wembanyama. We're 24 players deep. I get to the first guy I think really Donovan is Jaylen Brown. Money. I think at some point Boston might just have money problems. Okay? Karl Anthony Towns, they might have money problems at 26. We'll see. Brandon Ingram, New Orleans could end up shaking that thing up. Possible. Lauri Markkanen, 29. James Harden, 30. Trae Young, 31. So, would you trade for Trae Young? The first thing I would just say when you're discussing whether you trade for Trae Young is how many players better than Trae Young would you ever get a chance to trade for? So that's like, that to me is the real question. And the next grouping of players after that on the Ringer 100 is Kyrie, Tyrese Maxey, Ja Morant, Paulo Banchero, Scotty Barnes, Rudy Gobert, Chet Holmgren, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, Alperen Sengun, Pascal Siakam. Like, we're into the 40s now. Jalen Williams, Julius Randle, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Darius Garland. Darius Garland could get moved if they kept Donovan, but probably not. Drew Holiday. Like, these guys just don't, like, some of them move, some of them aren't going to move. So, like, you can give me this, well, Trae Young supposedly doesn't get along with his teammates. Well, Trae Young is bad defensively. Well, Trae Young, all the reasons, you can give me all the reasons why you'd say no on Trae Young. And then I would bring up, like, well, who's better? Who are you getting better? So would you trade for Trae? I would certainly entertain it. I would certainly think about it. You know, Trae Young's probably close to a walking top 10 offense. He's really incredible offensively. And at some point, you're trying to acquire time. It's a little bit how I felt on Zach LaVine. Everybody, and may have been wrong. Like, my feeling on Zach LaVine was, whatever, if you trade for Zach LaVine, you take his contract, it's problematic, and his value is certainly dropping, and it would have been a high risk, but he also would have been probably better than the players we were trading for, right? Just his ranking, his individual ranking, and then maybe you can move that for another player. Who knows? But if you're trying to get a top 10, a top 20, a top 50, like, Trae Young's top 50. Probably not top 20 yet, but maybe. So anyway, just chew on it in that way. Will we see Jason Preston playing? Do you think that his G League play means he's an NBA player? So Jason Preston is a player we signed recently on a 2-way deal. We made a nice little trade for him. Joaquin Newman, our GM of the G League team, made a nice little trade for Jason. Jason's out of the University of Ohio. He was originally drafted by the LA Clippers. He's 6'3", and he was the G League Player of the Week. He's had 3 straight triple-doubles. Ron Boone went and watched him play the other day and really, really liked him. So that's the first, like, came back to me and was like, what do you know about this kid? So here's my take on him out of college. And he has played so little, I'm not sure that there's a lot of change on this. So he came out of Ohio. He was 6'4", he's 6'3", 6'4", about 187. He had great size. He played with a hesitation game and a multiple pace game, which I think is unique for a college player. Most kids just play full bore, straight ahead. He is not an elite athlete. He does not get off the ground a lot. He's not going to get on top of the cup with a great, like, proficiency driving to the basket. That wasn't but I really liked him as a college player, as, to me, a projected backup point guard or rotation guard in the NBA, because I thought he could shoot it well enough. I thought he had the hesitation game. I thought he had control of the game. I thought he was a great pass first guy. Point guards have changed a little bit, frankly, in those last 3 years. He's played almost none. He played 14 games with the Clippers. I don't think he ever played in the 2022-23 season. I don't think he ever played more than like 5 minutes. I don't think there's a single game in which you can, like, ever give him evaluation. I think he had like 3 games where he played like 15 minutes. He had one 36-minute game. Like, of his 57 minutes, they all came on like one night where he played 36 minutes. He scored 12 points. He had 8 assists. They lost to the Cavaliers by 23. I don't know any so I still go back to he's had so little. His G League's been really good. I liked him out of college as a NBA rotation player. I thought in a late first-round draft pick, I thought that. He averaged 16 points. He averaged 7 rebounds. He averaged 7 assists in college. I just thought he did a lot of stuff well. His free throw shooting was massively problematic in college. His last year, he shot 60% from the line, which is a really bad indicator of whether you're going to be able to shoot college threes. Do I think we're going to see Jason Preston? Yes. Chris Dunn's out on rest tonight. Jordan Clarkson's out with a groin injury that could be a little while. And so I think we're going to start to see Jason Preston play rotation minutes and find out whether his G League stuff is real. Of our young prospects, who is the highest ceiling and who is most likely to reach their ceiling? So that's a really interesting question you can overthink a little bit. So I've done that as I was preparing for the show. So the highest ceiling is still Taylor, right? It's just size and length and athleticism. Taylor Hendricks is unique. There just are not a lot of guys that are 6'9", let's say he gets up to 215 or so and 220, who can run and jump like that. And if he develops all the skills, like, his upside maybe is possibly someone like, his biggest upside would be Jaren Jackson Jr. I don't think we ever see that. That's Defensive Player of the Year, center, and Jaren Jackson's probably an inch and a half taller, and that probably precludes that from being a really good comp. But of the ceiling, that might be the highest ceiling of all the guys. Who's the player I think most likely reaches their ceiling? I actually think the player most likely reaches their ceiling is Bryce Sensabaugh, because I just don't think his ceiling is like, I think he's a off the bench 15-point-a-game scorer in the NBA ceiling, and I think he could do that. Now, I guess if you just want to keep pushing the ceiling, but there's some reasons why I just don't think Bryce is going to be a starting shooting guard in the NBA that averages 22. Like that, I guess, is the next step. So like when I look at Bryce, particularly as a 29th pick of a draft, I look at him and say, can you get a rotation player? That would be a massive win at that point. I think the answer is yes. Do you think you can get a productive rotation player who actually has a skill? And I think he's a bucket getter. So I think he could really learn how to score and be Norman Powell, Tim Hardaway Jr., to poor man's Tobias Harris type player. And I think he can reach that quite easily. And so then my answer a little bit on this is, I think where everyone probably expected the highest ceiling to be Keontae and the player to reach their ceiling be Keontae, I think I take Taylor and Bryce just to overthink it a little bit. But that's kind of my thought on that. Will Isaiah Thomas play for the Utah Jazz? So Isaiah cannot be a two-way player. He would have to sign a deal with the Jazz. We just used 2 roster spots to sign Kenny Lofton and Darius Baisley. So it seems unlikely, and it doesn't seem like it matches our timetable as much. I think the Jazz are giving him a great opportunity with the Stars. He's been playing well. He's added a lot of intrigue and interest there. And so I think that's I'd be surprised if he plays for the Utah Jazz. And because also you can't put him on a two-way deal because he's been a veteran for so long. So the route to get him onto the roster is really complicated. Do you want the Jazz to keep their pick or convey it? I want us to keep our pick at this point. It's insurance. Next year we have Minnesota and Cleveland's picks. So if we convey our pick next year, it seems to be like that would be a lot better asset allocation. Furthermore, if something goes disastrously wrong next year, it's nice to be able to still keep our pick for next year. We have that. We have insurance that it's still top 10 protected. So there's no real downside here. Like if we suddenly go to 15 next year and we have Cleveland and Minnesota's picks, we'll have 2 picks that are similar. We convey the pick. That's fine. If something goes wrong next year, so somebody gets hurt, we just don't win games. We still are protected 1 through 10. We get the pick again. So it seemed just to make an effort now to go get to 11 just to get rid of a pick doesn't make any sense. The key spot is being 9. If you're 9, you have about a 97% chance of keeping the pick, and you actually have about a 1 in 4 chance of getting into the top 25, or excuse me, top 4, 1 in 4 into the top 1 or 4, 1 and 5 into the top 4. So, and if we get to 8, that's even better. But Brooklyn's not playing along with that. Atlanta's actually, the ironies tonight is a game that if we were to lose and Atlanta were to win, it would be very helpful in us securing 9 points gained. Is our offensive metric on how we determine who is the best offensive players in the NBA and who are the most negatively detrimental offensive players in the NBA. We'll look at that. There's someone making a run for the MVP that no one's talking about with his numbers, and we'll touch on that when we continue here on Locked On Jazz. Fantasy players, it's time for your eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit with Josh Lloyd, your number 1 fantasy show in the world. Locked On Fantasy Basketball with the great Aussie Josh Lloyd continues to kill it. And eBay Motors gives you the guaranteed fit. So let's do it. Here's what Josh Lloyd says for players you might want to grab on your fantasy team if you have not already done so next week. Norman Powell, Westbrook out. Kawhi Leonard dealing with a back issue. Powell should see his touches and minutes jump during the week. Jock Landale. Landale will see larger minutes now that Alperen Şengün's season is done in Houston. What a bummer. Grady Dick in Toronto. The Raptors seem committed to giving him 30 minutes each night as they rotate in and out other players in the lineup. DeAndre Hunter, who we'll see tonight for Atlanta, is the only forward standing for Atlanta with all their injuries. He's still coming off the bench, but he's doing a lot of scoring. And Keontae George is taking charge in Utah. So the 5 players that Locked On Fantasy Basketball's Josh Lloyd says you should look into: Norman Powell, Jock Landale, Grady Dick, Keontae George, and DeAndre Hunter. Those are your guaranteed fits of the week. Josh Lloyd, Locked On Fantasy Basketball, is going to help you win the championship, and eBay Motors is going to make your ride or die a championship fit with 122 million parts. Make sure your ride runs smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with guaranteed fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride for the first time, every time, your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Motors, guaranteed fit, available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. And thanks so much for being an everydayer. Greatly appreciate it. All right, let's do points gained. Sometimes I try to share my screen on this. Let's see if I can do it again. It's so small. But for those of you that are on YouTube, for those of you that are listening, it will not impact your experience at all, I promise. So we will try to share a screen here and let you see who the leaders are and who we're talking about. For those of you, I'm not always very good at this. They give you so many. All right, let's see if I did it correctly. There we go. There's the shared screen for the player ranks. It's actually, you can see that we've done this since 2015-16 because it literally says player ranking. So the number one points gained players in the NBA for the 23-24 season, Joel Embiid still holds, but Giannis Antetokounmpo has jumped up to a plus 3.5. Every year, we generally have about 3 guys that are plus 3. Let me back up and explain points gained for those who are new to this. Points gained is the amount of points you score with your scoring opportunities on a given night above what average players in the NBA would do with the same opportunity. So in other words, if you look at scoring opportunities, Joel Embiid uses 27.4 a night. Giannis uses 24, and they both score 3.5 points more than what average players would do with that. The number one premise here is you want players that are above average. The number two premise is that negative players are far more detrimental than the league has realized. So every year we've done this over the years. If we go back and look at like the 18-19 season, Giannis was 3.6, Steph was 3.5, James Harden was 3.3, Durant 2.9, Rudy 2.8, Karl Anthony Towns. And every year we do this. Go back to 16-17, Durant was 3.8, little Isaiah Thomas was 3.4, James Harden 2.9, Steph 2.9. Usually we have about 3 players that are over 3 and about 10 players that are over 2. So this is this year. Joel Embiid 3.5, Giannis 3.5, super high. By the way, if you're wondering, if we go back, I think Steph Curry in 15-16, which was his monster season, like the greatest offensive season we may have ever seen, he was a plus 5.8. That was the peak of the greatness of Steph. So Embiid 3.5, Giannis 3.5, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 3.1, Nikola Jokic 2.8. Jokic just slipped a little bit recently, actually. And Durant 2.5. This passes the eyeball test. Those are the 5 best offensive players in the NBA. Kristaps Porzingis plus 2.3, Luka plus 2.3, Sabonis plus 2.3. Daniel Gafford is in Dallas, and he has made 33 straight shots until yesterday, so his efficiency is pretty good. Grayson Allen having a monster year in Phoenix 2.0. Lowry 1.9. Derek Lively 1.9. Jared Allen 1.9. This is what we want Walker to be one day. Nick Richards 1.9. Mark Williams hasn't played much. Rudy Gobert 1.8. Jalen Duren 1.8. That's where your rookie should be. Kawhi Leonard 1.7. Karl Anthony Towns 1.6. Steph at 1.6. That's some serious aging. Zubac 1.6. Jimmy Butler 1.5. LeBron 1.5. Chet. James Harden 1.4, Devin Booker 1.4. So this is these are great players at 1.3, 1.4, things of that nature. Let's look at the most negatively detrimental offensive players in the NBA for the season. And we scan down, and they've got to have played some games, so we have to kind of fly through. Scoot Henderson is a minus 2.6. Not super alarming. Rookies are there quite a bit. Quite often. Cody Martin in Charlotte, minus 2.0. Jordan Poole, minus 1.9. Jalen Green, minus 1.9. That's getting to be a lot in your third year. It's a little bit of Jordan Clarkson, minus 1.9. Karis LeVert is always in this group, minus 1.9. He's truly one of the least efficient offensive players. Theo Maledon, Nikola Vucevic, minus 1.8. Shaedon Sharpe, minus 1.7. Killian Hayes, minus 1.6, always in that group. Xavier Tillman, who was created Boston Inquired, and everyone's excited, not sure. Russell Westbrook, minus 1.5, which is better for him than usual. Talon, minus 1.9. Jake LaRavia and David Roddy, 2 players drafted in the first round by Memphis a few years ago, both at minus 1.5. A lot of young players, nothing particular. Kyle Kuzma, minus 1.3 on a not particularly great team. Let's look at the Utah Jazz overall for the season. And in our 10 games, we'll look at our guys we traded, see how they're doing. Lowry's at minus 1.9. Micah Potter jumps in. Colin at 0.9. That is so good for a guard. Walker Kessler 0.9, getting close. John Collins 0.6, been super recently. Chris Dunn minus 0.2, which is fine. Bryce minus 0.3. Taylor minus 0.3. Luka Samanic minus 0.6. Keontae minus 0.7. That's pretty good for a rookie when you think about where Scoot was. Some of the other rookies. Talon minus 1.5. Johnny Juzang minus 1.5. And Jordan Clarkson minus 1.9. Who are the hottest players in the NBA right now? Giannis is blowing the league up. No, not quite, but he's pretty hot. Here's Giannis. He's at a 4.8. Micah Potter, just a few minutes. LeBron is plugged back in at plus 3.4. There's Daniel Gafford not missing. Nikola Jokic at 3.3. DeAndre Ayton, 3.2, is not missing right now. He's shooting 84% of his shots as twos, and he's making them. Michael Porter, 3.0. Herb Jones is hot. Luka Doncic. Terrence Mann, who was the Clippers. DeMar DeRozan have a monster game today. Shea, Jalen Duren, Cameron Johnson, Luke Kennard, Jalen Suggs. We saw that in hand. Obviously, smaller sample size, much more players over 2. Drew Holiday's gotten a little bit hot there. Jamal Murray at 2.1 as Denver's really heating it up. Let's go take a look at the coldest players in the NBA. This one's a little tricky for me. I'm going to have to go back to 100% because I need to see who's actually been playing recently when I do this. So this will be a little harder for you to read. And then we'll go back to the Zoom for those of you that are watching it on YouTube. Trae Young, who's just not played very many games. All right. Alec. Oh, that's interesting. Nick Smith, Scoot Henderson, youngsters. Steph Curry minus 3.3 before the injury. Alec Burks, of guys that were traded has really struggled since the trade. Karis LeVert back into this group. Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, Cole Anthony, Jaren Jackson Jr., Reggie Jackson, Anthony Edwards. It's interesting for all the highlights. Dylan Brooks, Miles Bridges, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante DiVincenzo, Brandon Miller wearing down a little bit probably in Charlotte at a minus 2.0. Kobe Buffkin, who's hurt, another youngster. Let's look at the Utah Jazz and what they have been doing recently in the last 10 games. And Keontae obviously having an extended run here. It'll be interesting to see. He's been putting up big points without a lot of other offensive players around. What's his efficiency? What's his points gained? So Colin Sexton's at a 1.7, which is amazing. John Collins at a 1.3. Taylor's at a 1.2. Keontae's at a 1.1. That is so good. That is so exciting. You just don't have rookie guards do that very often. Walker's at a 0.1. Lowry's at a minus 1.3. Talon minus 1.4. Jordan Clarkson a minus 1.7. Let me do a quick scan. Hopefully the filters are right. They're not always. We'll take a quick check on our guys. Simone's been playing really well. Let's see what his efficiency has been. And of course, the Detroit. There he is. Simone's at a 1.5. That is awesome. Way to go, Simone. Taking 46% of his shots last 10 games. Kelly Olynyk's at a 1.2, as he always kind of is. Ochai Abaji's at a minus 1.5. So there you go. That is your points gained today. That is Locked On Jazz. Thanks so much for tuning into the program. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back with you postcast after the game on Saturday, tonight and Saturday with Minnesota. And then Monday, I'll be back with you with a regular show before we get ready for the Timberwolves on Monday again. So a lot of fun games. Hope to see you out at the arena. Thanks very much for tuning in. We now send you to the first ever 24/7 national sports channel. It's called Locked On Sports Today. Make sure you check it out. Remember, March 20th, Major League Baseball preview for you as well. You can get Locked On Sports Today at YouTube as well as on Amazon Fire TV. Thanks so much for tuning in.